Good evening, and welcome to the weird and the wonderful with Strange Bones. So, as we wait for everybody to join in, Chris, welcome. I decided tonight we are going to rabbit hole a little bit and possibly start what might be a new topic. Jaden, welcome. So, how are you this evening? And thank you so much for the likes.
I'm good.
I'm glad to hear that. So, what news? What news? Tonight, I thought we would start a new topic. Something to move us along and give us something different. So, tonight we are going to look at the history and mythology of werewolves. What do you think?
I already know about it, about the sticks. No, that's vampires. No, never mind.
Well, let's find out what we can. Where do they come from? Why do people believe in them? And who actually believes in them? Where do the stories come from? So, a whole selection of possible things, something slightly different from what we've been doing. And I think it might be quite interesting. And along with that, let's just quickly start off and remind everybody that we have but one rule on the channel, and that's don't be rude, because if you are rude, we boot you off. But other than that, we enjoy a great deal if people have different comments. Well, a lot of people don't, Dan. A lot of people don't, but some do. And the question, of course, in terms of things is, where do the stories come from? Why do we have mythologies in that regard? So we're going to start off with werewolves because, well, we can. Yes, you can ask a question.
Can we learn about Tokoloshis?
Well, that's going to be one of the cryptids we shall have to dive into in more detail. We've got a selection of different ones to talk about. So as the topic progresses, we'll be able to look at a number of different ones, and we will absolutely cover Tokoloshis because they might, in fact, be related to skinwalkers. So, well, it all has to do with the origin stories, which is very interesting.
But skinwalkers are huge, and Tokoloshis are small little goblin creatures. That's scary.
Well, yes, there is that, but they have a number of other things in common, which has to do with their relationship to how they are brought about. Thanks so much to the King for the likes. So that's kind of why we're looking at a number of different cryptids, just to see where they come from, what the stories are, and why people have come to believe in them. And is there any possibility that any of it might be true? Because there are a number of legends that are quite modern, as a matter of fact, which is very interesting. So, if you're into the weird and the wonderful, remember, like, share, subscribe, join the fan club, and do all the good things that make the channel go. So, with that, let's get this show on the road.
Can I ask a question?
You can ask a question, sir.
Do you have YouTube?
Do I have a what?
YouTube. Do you like do videos on there also?
I do, as a matter of fact, and in that regard, just so that everybody knows, what I've been doing, because I've saved every live ever done, I'm now taking them and dating them, or at least numbering them by order that they came out, and they are in fact on the YouTube for May and June. I'll be getting July's stuff up next, and then August, September, and so on until we manage to catch up with where we are, whereupon I will make sure that I post the YouTube version of the live the next day. So yes, we do, and I will provide a link to that as well in due course. So yeah, I will put it up on a post. There is a post up already on my TikTok as a picture, which shows you where to go. I will add a hopefully shareable link if I can get it to work. It didn't work the last time I tried, but I will do that as well, so you can follow all of the ones you may or may not have missed. So yes, thank you for that. I do appreciate it.
What was I gonna ask? I forgot.
No problem. It'll come back to you. I'm sure it will.
It won't. Every time I forget something, it's gone. I'm not gonna remember it ever again.
Well, maybe it will turn up when it is ready for the turning of up. But
oh yeah, I remember.
Yes.
How live are you gonna be live? How live are you gonna be live for?
I normally cut it at 2 hours. So 10 to 12 South African time, just in case you're not from South Africa. We do actually have a number of people, in case anybody is curious about that. I, weirdly enough, have quite a following in Ukraine, apparently, looking at the analytics, and Canada. And of course, Canada's time is very different to here. I believe that when we start our live, they are at around 4 in the afternoon. So they're still working, poor fellows. So they usually only...
Oh, but you must remember some children are on TikTok, so they can also just watch.
That is true. So yeah, we got all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds, and all of your comments are very welcome. And if you don't believe, that's fine, and if you do believe, that's fine. But the idea, of course, behind all of this is purely for curiosity and enjoyment. So yeah, to have a little bit of interest and fun. So werewolves is tonight's topic. So where do werewolves start turning up in stories? And for better or for worse, the answer is actually a lot longer ago than you might think. So, for example, one of the first mentions that we have record of is in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which comes from around 2000 BC. So approximately 4,000 years ago. So it turned up a while back, shall we say. And according to the Epic of Gilgamesh, the old Babylonian stories, it involved a rejected lover being transformed into a wolf by the goddess Ishtar. Of course, we get a lot of our stories and mythology through the Greek mythology. So you may have heard of the phrase a lycanthrope, yes? Yes, you can ask a question, Jaden. Go for it.
Is Japanese folklore on the topic, or no?
Well, interestingly enough, it will become so because they don't have wolves, so no werewolves, but they do have shapeshifters. So they are going to turn up in the other kinds of shapeshifters as the live progresses, and possibly in following lives if the topic carries on. Because as it turns out, there are quite a lot of different shapeshifters. And the way it works does depend on the culture. Now, the most famous shapeshifters in Japan, of course, are the kitsune.
Yeah, I know that one, the one that dances in the fields.
That is entirely correct. And the fact that you've mentioned the fields is important because they are indeed very much connected to farming and agriculture, strangely enough. So very important in that regard. But of course the kitsune is not a fox but a wolf. Now they can be quite different in many ways to the traditional sort of Western werewolf view.
Oh, my friend is here.
Yes, just a guy has joined us. Hey, welcome, welcome. So
Looks like, he's going to teach us live again.
Cool. So yeah, you get different views of the shapeshifters as well. In some cases they're quite good, and in some cases they're very, very bad. And in some cases it seems it depends entirely. So we have to be careful of how we dictate what they are or are not. So, for example, the Irish werewolves are good, whereas most of the Chthonic werewolves are quite bad. So it does depend, it seems. Now, have you heard of a lycanthrope? Because we get the word lycanthrope, partly, of course, from the Greek lykon, meaning a wolf. But the word itself comes from the name of the king Lacan, who was cursed with wolf form lycanthropy, in fact, by the god Zeus for an act of cannibalism. So that's where we get lycanthropy from. And just to clear things up a little bit etymologically, different shapeshifters are known as what we would call therianthropes, which is also from the Greek, meaning an animal shifter. So all shapeshifters by and large are therianthropes, but only those that turn into a wolf is a lycanthrope, which of course in English is a werewolf, meaning a man that becomes a wolf from the Old English. So we do have a number, in fact, of real-life stories of werewolves, which are very interesting. Whether or not they really were werewolves is another question, of course. But some claim that they were, including the famous Peter Stumpf. Zhao, welcome. How are you? He's not talking. That's all right.
I have
Yes.
to go take my brother to bed, so I'll be right back.
No problem. Tuck him in well. And we will catch Jaden when he returns. So, the werewolf myths, they come from a lot of different folklore worldwide. As we say, the Epic of Gilgamesh from Babylon, which was quite a long time ago. The stories in Greek mythology of the King Lacan, and various other European stories of werewolves. And of course, the very important point, which perhaps might be a little bit obvious, but nevertheless should be pointed out, is that werewolves only actually appear in any mythology where you get wolves. So Japan...
Can my brother just say goodnight to you?
Yes, he can.
Say goodnight. Good night.
Good night, sleep well.
Sleep nice. It's your birthday, Father. No, it's not his birthday. Come, let's go.
Ah, that's awesome. He is a very good brother. So, with that said, we see that we have various versions of the different things, and it depends where that it comes from that we get our different ideas behind what they are. Now, starting off with the Epic of Gilgamesh. We see it goes through Babylon, Greece, more Greece with Herodotus, who was quite a famous Greek historian back in the day. He describes an entire tribe called the Neuri, which were a nomadic tribe of magical men who would transform into wolves for several days each year. Among the stories in medieval times, you have things like the Knight Bisclavret in a story by Marie de France, who is trapped in wolf form by his wife's trickery. And then, of course, they go on to things like the famous Ulfhednar of Viking stories, who were in and of themselves very real, but it was said that they could transform into wolves. Whether or not that is true is a different story, but they were one of the forms of the berserker. Now, we know of 4 variety of berserker, and the berserker proper are quite literally bear warriors, and they were the most unpredictable and difficult to control because of their madness in battle, and in fact they were eventually outcasts because of that. But the Ulfhednar were quite different. They were much more controlled, and they would work in groups, but no less feared. And then, of course, besides that, you had varying other forms.
Welcome back.
Yes, welcome, welcome. That's awesome. You were very quick. Did you throw him into the bed, and that was that? Ah, that's awesome. But nevertheless, so going through history, we see that werewolves turn up in all kinds of places. Now, in South America, you have the legends of the lobizon, which, of course, is derived from the Spanish lobos, meaning wolf, a creature that transforms from the 7th son of a family, which is sort of mixed in a way with the European werewolf legends as well. An interesting kind of a thing, how it turns up in many ways. And then, of course, you've got varying stories, as we have said, around the world, of all sorts of shapeshifters of other creatures. But tonight is werewolves, so we shall see what we can discover from that. Now, as we progress, let's pull up the old notes and just shift that across to, oops, there. And we will begin with the official knowledge as we have it. So werewolf literally comes from the Old English meaning man-wolf, which we generally refer to as a lycanthrope. As we said, from lykaon, from the Greek, which was actually a lot long after the actual stories developed. Now, one of the interesting things is, how does one become a werewolf? And different groups have said that there were different methods, in fact.
Wait, you can become a werewolf?
Well, dependent on the type, because it seems there are different types. So some of them are born that way, some become that way by choice, and some become werewolves through a curse. So apparently, at least according to the mythology, yes, you can, dependent on which variety. So we have a different version also in the way that they appear. So some of them are literally a complete human when they're in human form, and a complete wolf when they're in wolf form. Whereas other versions say that instead they don't become a complete wolf, but rather a sort of hybrid with part wolf and part human attributes. They move on hind legs and stand like a man, but nevertheless are pretty hairy in that regard. So again, a different variety. So your therianthropic hybrids, which are most popular at the very least in modern movies. Now, lycanthrope means wolf-human, just as therianthrope means animal-human. Now, curses, as we know, are done by somebody else onto somebody. Nevis15, hello, welcome. I saw you did try to join. If you would like me to give you another invite, I will absolutely do that. If you would like me to. If not, you're welcome to sit and watch and comment in the comments as much as you like as well. So feel free either way. So shape-shifting has been popular for a great many centuries. Now, a curse is the first method. Okay, no problem. I will drop you a invite. Do. We'll just add that. Dumpy dum. Let me go there and go there. If it will let me. It's doing thinking. It's very slow tonight. I'm not quite sure why. Interesting. You may say something.
I'm gonna mute myself, and every time I wanna just say something, I'm gonna unmute.
Okay, no problem at all. That's perfect. Nevis15, for some reason, you are blocked from joining the live. I am not sure why.
You can make me moderator and I'll unblock him.
Well, I think it's possibly... Oh no, there we go. It seems to have worked. Nevis15, welcome.
Hello guys, hello.
How's it? How you doing?
I'm fine, you sir, I'm fine, you.
Good. So what do you think of werewolves?
Well, in my opinion, like sometimes they can low-key become paranormal during the nighttime. They can actually become like skinwalkers, is what I've heard nowadays. Like when the eyes go yellow, you can tell that they're skinwalkers. And
Can I say something?
You can indeed.
So you're saying I could turn into a werewolf right now? Like I could say wibbity wobbity wobbity woo, and I'll be one.
Well, it's not that simple, no. It would require, as we say, a number of possible things to happen before you could do that. And then, of course, comes in the when you would turn, because that also does depend. So, as we've seen, the first methodology is through a curse. And usually you find when it's a curse, as in done to you by somebody else. Born Sinner, welcome, hello. we then see that it's usually not up to you when you will change. Usually it's, at least in the mythology, by the night of a full moon. The other methodology to get the affliction is almost through sickness, as it were, because
So is it a bad thing or a good thing? Like, is it a bad thing if you change?
Well, again, I think it would depend on how, because if you're cursed, it would be bad, because that's never done for your good. And then you don't have control over when you change, and when usually in the case of at least according to the stories, if it's through a curse, when you have done, you become incredibly dangerous to everybody around you, and you have no control over it. So that would be bad. You can also get it from a bite or scratch from another werewolf, which also seems to be more of a bad thing. Then you get two other versions.
If you control it like, I want to be and I don't want to be like.
Well, then there are the other two kinds of ways to become a werewolf. The first method is through a special variety of sorcery, where they say that you use either a wolf skin or a wolf skin belt or something like that, but then you are more in control because it's you that chose to do it. And then, of course, the last way, at least according to mythology, is if you are born that way, in which case you can change when you like because it's natural to you. Thank you to Sango for the likes. I appreciate that greatly.
I'm gonna try quickly. Oh.
Did it work?
Nice. No.
Ah.
I wanted to be one.
Well, alas. So yes, two of the varieties seem to be controllable, and two of the varieties are not. So you would want, I suppose, to do it via the good way, and then you're in charge, rather than through the bad ways where you are not, at least according to the stories. So many of the origins come from obviously old European folklore, some of which, of course, do come from Romania and such, which is where you get also your vampire myths. So Slavic stories contain quite a lot. We do know that. And we also know that during the Middle Ages, Christianity, weirdly enough, was very concerned with werewolves and things. And there were a lot of stories that went around, and they were often linked to witches. So obviously that was a big deal in the Middle Ages, and it spread all over Europe and to the Americas because of it. Which may account for some things, but they are by no means the only stories out there. And in fact, we know that in the early modern period, which is the bit just after the late Middle Ages, there were actual trials where supposed werewolves were put on trial and accused of varying things. So this happened even in countries like Switzerland, of all places. So that would be around the 15th century. And then, of course, it spread around 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries and really got quite serious. The famous story in Germany of Peter Stumpf, he claimed he was a werewolf, and he was actually executed for a number of very, very violent crimes and the unaliving of quite a few people, which was not good at all. So he was a criminal, but he claimed at least that he was a werewolf. So you had...
Did the lives like learn about the Mexican things and all?
Well, that's going to have to be slightly different because you don't get wolves in Mexico. So they don't have werewolves. In Mexico instead, they have were-jaguars. And that was tied in with the Aztecs and the Mayans, which is very interesting, in fact. But we will get to the other therianthrope types eventually as well. But just for the werewolves, we know that as what, besides the actual transformation of yourself, apparently there were also ways that you could do what was referred to as wolf riding or wolf charming. Now, when they say wolf riding, they don't mean riding on top of a wolf like a horse. They mean connecting your soul somehow to a wolf and then going out in that wolf to do whatever. And then wolf charming, where you would have the power to control wolves and make them
It's
do
like
what
saying now, like, you don't believe in God anymore, you believe in wolves.
Well, the stories vary, but to a certain degree, yes. That would kind of be the at least the accusation. Now, in 1589, the case of Peter Stumpf was at the top end of the fear of werewolves and the persecution of supposed werewolves, mostly in French-speaking and German-speaking Europe for whatever reason, which persisted longest in Bavaria and Austria, and not just of people like Peter himself, but he was known, in fact, as the werewolf of Bedburg, was it? So he was quite the lad. But there were also wolf charmers that they persecuted as well, even in Carinthia and Styria, which are that side of the world, of the Chthonic world, if you will. So
Are you also good with like Bible history and all?
yes, as a matter of fact, I am versed in quite a bit of that because I was trained as a priest and I have studied the Bible quite extensively. So yes, some of that.
And you sound like a priest, I knew it.
I'm not a priest. I was trained as one. There is a
I
difference.
know, but like you can hear it in your voice, you can hear the, how do I say it? You can hear the audio of what's called, I don't know how to explain it.
Well, you are trained in public speaking and such as part of your education, because obviously a preacher has to be able to preach. So yes, you do get a certain tendency to speak in certain ways when you start talking about things, I suppose. So yeah, well spotted. So what kind of words reflect to these things? Well, it shows just how much the stories went around, because you have the Old English, werewolf, weerwolf in Dutch, Warwolf in Middle Low German, Werul in West Frisian. Frisia is a place in what is near or around what is now Germany. The Oasi-Wolfers, which is similar to the Slavic view, the Ulfhednar from Old Norse, the Ulfhethin from Old Irish, the Luchthon, and the Sanskrit of all, which is from India, Vrikjina. So werewolves are all over the world. We see that as well in the French Garwath as well. Mr. Van Gister would like to join. Let's let you join in.
Good Evening, oh night. Tahu Harry Potter yung
Simon
masuk bus.
Penny, verswering.
Oh Harry Potter, pada kat, pada dah ujian. Saya Harry Potter. Lo sila mana sila dari Owex. Kan before you outside. Push. Oh night the class.
Okay, using bad language is not permitted on the channel. Sorry, not in any language. And yes, I do speak Afrikaans, and yes, I know what he was saying. So,
Saying, yeah, I do too. He said don't N-word and Joe, Papa, and something.
so unfortunately, we get this every now and then when people like to jump on and just be rude. And
Attention, that's what.
yep, and that's why we have the single law of no rudeness on the channel. And if people keep at it, we block and ban and report, because really, we're here for the enjoyment and amusement, not for
That's
precies. Ons kan dit nie laat nie. Okay, so as we go on, we see that by and large the meanings of all of the words are pretty much the same thing. So it shows that all over Europe we had a lot of the same stories that have developed and gone on for a very long time, from the Vadlakas, from the Slavic areas, the Vrikolakas from the Greek, the Vrklak from Romanian, and so on and so on. So there's a lot of different evidence, if you will, of these kinds of things. Shem, it seems that Anton's not joining too quick. The signal's obviously not great tonight. There's a bit of a struggle. Yes, ask away, sir.
Is it raining by you because it's raining by me?
It's not raining by me. It has been raining. So I think it depends on the different areas. But for some reason our internet is a little slow tonight. I'm not sure why, because we don't have rain or a storm. So I'd hoped it would be stronger. But nevertheless, now we have a very interesting and quite negative version in the Indo-European mythology, which shows that the werewolves were probably bad and somewhat cannibalistic, which obviously would be considered a negative thing. It's said that in certain places it was used as initiation rituals in things like the Koryos warrior class, among the Sanskrit-speaking people, so Upper India, and it involved a kind of a cult.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I think my dog is slow because she's growling at the rain.
Funny enough, dogs seem to really not like the bad weather and rain. Ours have a serious problem with it as well.
There's no lightning or anything. She's just making.
Dogs are like that. They are slightly crazed. So, if you were a young, unmarried warrior, the cult would identify you with dogs and wolves in certain ways and require you to undergo a number of ritualistic things within the cult to become a proper warrior, including wearing a wolf skin. Now, we've seen that as well in the Greek culture from pottery that has been found showing warriors in wolfskins and obviously involved in some form of cultic ritual. So apparently there were ways to voluntarily become werewolf singers. So let's have a quick look at that. Now, in the Greek culture, we see it comes from Herodotus in his histories. Now, this is very interesting because what Herodotus is most known about in Greek literature is serious history. Most of what he wrote was very serious, dry, historical recordings. But every now and then he spoke of things or wrote of things that were quite weird and which we generally consider to be mythological. And of course the argument in that regard is that, well, no, they were real and he wrote about them like all of his histories, maybe, or maybe not. Now, he wrote about what the Scythians and the Greeks that settled in Scythia believed. So there was a tribe there to the northeast of Scythia, the Neuri, who were all transformed into wolves once a year for several days and then changed back. And he did say that in this case he was slightly unconvinced by the story, but the locals swore that this was truth. Now, interestingly enough, the story is also mentioned by the other great historian of the time from what is Rome, Pomponius Mela. So it seemed that this was a common and accepted belief of the time. In the 2nd century BC, the Greek geographer Pausanias related the story of the king Lycaon of Arcadia, who was transformed into a wolf because he had sacrificed a child on the altar of Zeus Lycanus. In the version of the legend told by Ovid in his Metamorphoses, when Zeus visits Lycaon disguised as a commoner, Lycaon wants to test if he's really a god, and to that end he kills a hostage and serves his entrails to Zeus. Disgusted with the action, Zeus turns Lycaon into a wolf. But in other accounts of the legend, like that of the Pseudo-Apollodorus Bibliotheca, Zeus blasts him and his sons with thunderbolts as punishments instead. So different stories relate, but this is where we in the modern world get our word lycanthropy from the tale of King Lycaon. Now, there's also another story of an Arcadian man called Darmachus of Parrhasia, who was turned into a wolf after eating the entrails of a human child sacrificed to Zeus Lycaeus. He was restored to human form 10 years later and became an Olympic champion. So this tale is also recounted by another great historian, Pliny the Elder. So it seems that these were very well-known tales. So apparently if you sacrifice somebody to Zeus Lycaeus and eat it, that's how you become a werewolf in Greek mythology. But don't try this at home, kids, because it's not a good thing. Oh dear, the stories that we dig up. So it seems that this was not just a once-off event, because...
Why am I so tired tonight? Ugh. And I normally stay up until like 4 o'clock, but now I'm tired. I don't know how. I was up.
Well, busy.
I still have a monster in the fridge, right?
Well, there you go. That should keep you going.
Wait, my father drank it. Oh my lord. Oh my gosh.
Well, you stick around as long as you can and we will take it from there. So, it seems that a lot of people would do this and transform into a wolf and then...
I will never do that. I want to stay human. I don't care. It's fine.
Well,
I don't want to be a wolf.
the change lasts 10 years each time. But if in that 10 years you again eat a person, then you will remain a wolf forever. So you've got to be somewhat controlled. Now, amongst other Greek things is
Wait, so you're
the...
saying I have to become a cannibal to do that?
According to the Greeks, there are different ways in different places, it seems.
Doesn't that mean Ted Bundy was a werewolf?
Not necessarily, because you, according to the Greeks, you would also have to make sure that you did it as a sacrifice to Zeus Lacheus.
Oh, so he's...
Yes. And fortunately, nobody knows exactly anymore how this sacrifice had to be done. So no more Greek werewolves, it seems, from this. But Lycos was also a wolf-shaped hero who was actually worshipped in Athens. And his shrine stood by the jury court, and the first jurors were named after him, the Leucos. Now, Pliny the Elder recounts another tale of lycanthropy where he mentions that in Arcadia, seems Arcadia is the place for Greek werewolves, once a year a man was chosen by lot from the Anthus clan, and the chosen man was escorted to a marsh in the area where he hung his clothes. Say again?
I feel bad for him, because imagine just being like kidnapped, taken to a place and...
Well, it may have been somewhat voluntary as well, though the chosen was chosen by lots. Nevertheless, he went willingly, and he would go and hang his clothes on an oak tree that was there and swim across the marsh, and having done so, he would turn into a wolf and join a pack for 9 years. If during these 9 years he never ate humans, he would return to the same...
Hear me out, that could be fun.
Well...
Like, think about it. Imagine, like, just running around, playing, and that could be fun. I'll do that, not the eating part, no.
Well... In this one, you don't have to do the eating. Jacqueline, welcome. How are you?
Okay, thanks. Yourself?
I'm good. So tonight we're discussing werewolves and where they come from. So it's a deep dive into the werewolves of the world.
I want to become a werewolf now. Just imagine, like, chasing rabbits around and the thrill that will be in that.
Well, it would be a mandatory 9 years, but you don't have to eat anybody. And if you manage to never eat anybody in those 9 years, at the end of it, you will change back into a person. You would just have to go to this specific marsh in Arcadia, hang your clothes on an oak tree, swim across, and then there you are, sorted. Now, finding Arcadia and finding that marsh might prove challenging, but nevertheless. Thank you, Jacqueline, for the heart. I do appreciate it greatly. So, this is how, according to the Greeks, you can turn into a werewolf. So, yes, if you don't abstain, however, from eating humans, then you will stay a wolf forever. So it's a one-chance thing. You've got to be strong for 9 years, but then you can come back. So, all right.
9 years is kind of a lot, so I'm gonna disagree on that one or so.
Yeah, it does. 9 years is quite a time. So there is that.
Oh, and that'll be torture because you're basically a dog and your hearing is super good, and New Year all you're gonna hear is pa pa pa, and it's gonna be sounding like guns.
Well, fortunately, back in the day when these stories come from, there were no fireworks.
Really?
Certainly not in Greece. Fireworks, incidentally, actually come from China. And
China
they,
creates everything at this point. No, they really creating everything.
well,
Was
they were related to the supernatural because it was believed that fireworks and loud noises, especially, would chase ghosts and spirits away. So the whole point of doing that on New Year is because it makes the bad things go away.
okay, that just made New Year's much darker.
Most things are pretty dark. It's quite interesting how a lot of things that we think are nice are not. If you've ever looked at the original stories of the Brothers Grimm, which include things like Sleeping Beauty, Little Red Riding Hood, Cinderella, all these lovely Disney classics, the originals were actually terrifying. They were horror stories. They weren't the nice stories that we get now via Disney. So many of these things are actually pretty dark.
I actually wouldn't mind getting my hands on the original Brothers Grimm's their stories.
Well, you can. They are available because nowadays they are what they call public domain. So you can download a copy of them from the internet. So you can get them.
I love horror movies, so that would be...
So yeah, you can read them. But yes, do be aware they are very dark and usually involve very, very bad things.
I've seen someone's head get chopped off. Please. I think I could handle it.
Well, some of them get even darker than that. I remember reading The Little Mermaid where they explain that once she took human form, walking on the ground with her new feet, every step was the same as walking on red-hot broken glass. And it doesn't have a happy ending. At the end of the story, she passes away and is turned into sea foam.
Okay, what the hell?
Yes, the original stories are not nice. So,
Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast, I know that it's got several explanations of... do you know what Stockholm Syndrome is?
No, unfortunately.
Okay, Stockholm Syndrome is a genuine psychological issue where, say you were kidnapped by a bad person, after a certain amount of time, you grow to like the person and will act for them on their behalf to protect them. Now,
Isn't
there
that
was
just laughing at class?
kind of in a way. Now, it's named after a famous case that happened in Stockholm, so hence Stockholm Syndrome. And it's actually a very serious and problematic issue where you have indoctrinated people, particularly with cults. Jordan Fox, hi.
I just want to warn you, if you hear like gunshots, I'm playing a game that has like guns and all.
Okay, fair enough. So yeah, there's a lot of things. Also, it involves very inappropriate themes and events on the sexual versions of things and more.
Mickey Mouse. About
So,
Mickey Mouse. I mean, that's a story.
well, the original Mickey Mouse was quite scary as well. There were a number of problems with the original things, particularly back when he was still called Steamboat Willie, which was his original name,
Steamboat Willie.
as in William.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Steamboat Willie.
But yeah, that was his original name way back when. He was only called Mickey Mouse much later. So things change a lot. Sang Martinse. I hope you're enjoying this. I'm glad to see that you are on. So yeah, we've got a number of different stories. These are the Greek ones. Now, moving along to Rome, you have Virgil's stories. Now, Virgil's known for his poetic works, and in one of his more famous ones, the Eclogues, he wrote of a man called Maurus, who used herbs and poisons picked in his native area to turn himself into a wolf. In prose, the Satyricon, written by Petronius in 60 AD, one of the characters, Nicaros, tells a story at a banquet of one of his friends that turned into a wolf. And he describes the incident as follows. Translated.
I just shot the guy with a nail gun.
Cool. So when I looked for my buddy, I see he had stripped and piled his clothes by the roadside. He then urinated in a circle around his clothes for whatever reason, and then like that turned into a wolf and started howling, then ran off into the woods. I imagine if you were out and having a nice time with your buddy and all of a sudden he turned into a wolf, you would be somewhat shocked.
But did that happen to you or did that happen to someone else?
Well, apparently this guy says it happened to his buddy. So yeah, he turned into a werewolf. Thank you so much to Jerry. Do appreciate all the shares there. Remember guys, we do this via you, so do like, share, subscribe and all the good stuff because it matters a great deal for us. So Virgil literally gives this story as saying it happened to him. He was there and his friend decided to turn into a wolf. So, all right. Now, as I say, Christianity became very concerned about werewolves, and we see that with a number of the early Christian authors, including the famous Saint Augustine of Hippo, a man who became a saint. And in his famous work, The City of God, he mentions werewolves. And Augustine explains that it is generally believed that by certain witches' spells, men may be turned into wolves. So this would be the curse option, as it were. Physical metamorphosis was also mentioned in the Capitulatum Episcopi, attributed to the Synod of Ancyra in the 4th century, which became the early Christian church's doctrinal text in relation to magic, witches, and transformations. So it was taken incredibly seriously by everybody and was considered to be true. The Capitulum Episcopi states that whoever believes that anything can be transformed into another species or likeness except by God himself is beyond doubt an infidel. So there you have it straight up. It's bad. So how did he transform into a lichen? Well, this is what we are checking out, Jordan. There are 4 ways that you can do it. Too bad, too good. The first way is, as is mentioned again, through a curse, which is a bad way because apparently if that happens you have no control. The second way would be through being bitten or scratched by a werewolf.
Like if you turn into a werewolf, are you like immortal or are you just like one shot and you're dead?
That's another question, and one which we will have to explore further because it relates absolutely to why silver is important to wolves. So welcome there to Ike Marokkain. I hope you are having a great evening. Welcome on.
I say my dog won't shut up.
So yes, how tough are werewolves is something we will get to. Now, in the works of the early Roman Christian writers, werewolves often received the name of verispellus, which literally means turn skin. But Augustine said in lupum fuisse mustum, which if you speak Latin means changed into the form of a wolf, to describe it, which is more the version that was taken on in the later medieval period afterwards. So in the Middle Ages, we've got evidence of very widespread belief in Europe, spanning right across the European continent and the British Isles, and they are mentioned in law. So one of the great early British kings was known as Nut the Great, and he made a lot of laws that started up early Britain, and his ecclesiastical ordinances aimed to ensure that the madly audacious werewolf does not too widely devastate nor bite too many of the spiritual flock. So they believed they were real. They treated them as though they were real, and there were laws, proper laws in place as being real.
So they knew it wasn't real. They just like kept playing on.
No, they thought it was absolutely real.
Oh.
Now, how fast and strong are they? Because Jordan Fox is asking, yes, are werewolves faster than a car? Are they strong? Are they durable? Well, this is going to come out as we progress through the stories, because they started to say that in some cases, normal weaponry does nothing to a werewolf. In other places, well, even that won't help if it's not the right stuff. And for silver, or coated with wolfsbane or other things, but we will see how that comes out. So it was said that Luchtbrand of Cremona reported a rumor that Bajan, the son of Simeon, Simeon I of Bulgaria, who was one of their rulers, could use magic to turn himself into a wolf. We know that Augustine had a large influence on the development of Western Christianity, being very much used by all the clergy in the medieval period. So they discussed werewolves in their writings as real things, including the works of Gerald of Wales, where he spoke about the werewolves of Ossory, and found in the Topographia Hibernica and Gervase of Tilbury's Otia Imperialia, where they were written for kings in order to know what was going on and deal with werewolves. So absolutely, it was considered to be a genuine thing that was real. In Germany, of course, there were a number of stories that lasted for a very long time, and this was a belief all over till quite recently, historically speaking, at least. So we have that going on. Now, Marie de France, in her poem about Bisclavret, who was a knight, a Breton knight, where he had to transform into a wolf every week. When his wife stole his clothing that he needed to restore his human form, he escaped the king's hunt by imploring the king for mercy and accompanying the king thereafter. And he stayed a wolf in court, quite tame, for a very long time, until his wife and her new husband appeared one day, and he remembered all of his anger, and he attacked and unalived her and her new husband. But the king deemed that his actions were just and the truth was revealed, so he was let off. Yes, that is a theory, but you will find that particular thing first comes out not with the werewolf or the loopkaru, but rather the later version, the rugaru, which is very important because the different stories develop when it comes to where it is. And of course, the rugaru is from New Orleans. That is their version of the werewolf. So they're the ones that say it's stress or anger that makes them transform, as opposed to the curse or the moon or things like that. So yes, we definitely have a progression dependent on where you are. So there are a lot of themes that you need to take your clothes off to transform, that you must avoid eating any human flesh, otherwise you're stuck as a wolf forever. And notice as well, all of these ones, they are a complete transformation into a wolf, not the modern version, which is like a half man, half wolf. Those come from later things. So these ones are all actual wolves, not wolf men. So as you move along, you find the French start speaking of them, the werewolf, which again just means a man-wolf, or gerulfi. So you've got different versions that are starting to come out, but they're told all over the Western world, which is where you get wolves. We do know, of course, that in Chthonic paganism you had wolf men, which is where the Ulfhednar of the Nordic views come from. Because among the Chthonic people, which include the Germanic, the Nordic, and all of those, you had wolf men, bear men, you had, I think they are the raven men as well. There's a number of different varieties of creatures. Ah, yes. We will speak of the forms of the berserk in due time, because there are 4 varieties of berserkers.
Like the bird raven or like...
Yes.
Oh, hell.
But they were assassins and poisoners. Quite scary. So, Jordan Fox, can you turn into a werewolf? Yes. Technically, at least according to the stories, in one of the varied ways, but we're starting to see that it might not be as much fun as you might think, and it might be quite bad dependent. So we know that the Germans have spoken of them, the French, the British, the Slavs, the Indians. Now we find also that there are stories among the Welsh, in the Akalamna Sanarach, the tales of the elders from the 12th century, and even they are mentioned in the famous story, which is mostly about the Welsh fairy, which is another thing we will have to discuss in due course. But do be warned, if you ever try to read this book, you will probably get a headache. The Mabinogion, which is probably the most famous Welsh mythological book. It's a fascinating read, but it's written in a very complicated way. It's written in Old Welsh, and it doesn't translate very well at all, which makes it really hard to read and understand. But it's an amazing read, because the modern view of the fairy having the court of light and the court of dark comes out of the fact that the Irish fairy were considered the court of light, the good ones. Well, that's debatable, but the light one, the pretty ones. But the Welsh fairy were very, very dark, and they form the court of night, and they are connected to the realms of the dead of Anun. So
I swear, some stuff are always so dark. Like, why does it have to be like that? They could have made it a less darker. They could have just made it lighten it up a little.
Well, the Welsh are a very dark people, to be fair, just as the Irish are always a very light-hearted bunch, and it shows in the stories and the mythologies quite clearly. So Germanic pagan traditions persisted longest among the Scandinavian Viking Age, as we have said, and werewolves there under Harald I of Norway were the Alfhedin. The Alfhedin, or the Alfhethin, were literally a group of warriors. So you have among the berserkers the bear warriors, you have the wolf warriors, you have the raven warriors, and you have the boar warriors. And the wolf ones are the Alfhednar, the wolf warriors, and they were considered to be very important, and Harold I had a whole group of them that served him, and they're a cross between what you would consider a ranger and a warrior, hunters and warriors, if you will, unlike the bear warriors, which is where we get the modern berserk, who were just straight up mad warriors. So they were considered to be much more controlled than the berserker, and they are mentioned in the Vatsendale, in the Havamal, which is one of the most important stories, and of course in the Volsung saga. You're singing, my lad. So, the Alfhedna are similar to the berserk, but used wolf, not bear, and they channeled the spirits of the animals to enhance their effectiveness as fighters. But rumor had it some of them could actually transform into wolves. Whether or not they could or couldn't is obviously the point. But they both, like the berserker and the Alfhedna, they both had close ties to Odin, and therefore were considered to be very, very important.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. No, I'm talking to my phone.
So then this moves on because it's also found among the Kievan Rus, where you find all the Slavic stories, and the 11th century Belarusian prince Vasilav of Polotsk was recounted in the Tale of Igor's campaign, and he's said to have been a werewolf. Here you go, Jordan Fox, capable of moving at superhuman speeds. So speed turns up here right away. Vasilav the prince judged men. As a prince he ruled towns, but at night he prowled in the guise of a wolf. From Kiev, prowling he reached before the cock's crow. Tumurkoran, the great path of the sun, as a wolf prowling he crossed. For him they rang for matins, which is the morning prayer in the Catholic monastic tradition. And when he heard them ringing, he would return. So now we see that this gives two forms of werewolf, which is very important as well, because now you're seeing a divergence. So you've got the Germanic werewolf associated with European witchcraft, and the Slavic werewolf, the Volkolak, which becomes associated with the vampire. So you get versions.
Makes me think of Underworld.
Yes.
Is it Underworld?
It is Underworld. Now, that's a modern movie variation which is actually based on the Slavic traditions rather than the Germanic. So, absolutely, the possible allying or possible enslaving of werewolves by vampires which turns up in Central and Eastern Europe, including Hungary, Romania, the Balkans, and all of that. So different to the Germanic version, which you find in France, Germany, and the Baltics. So you've got different versions of werewolves. Now, being a werewolf was a common accusation at the time in witch trials, and in the Valais witch trials in France, one of the earliest trials in the 15th century that started all the witch trials going and all of that, they were accused of being werewolves as well. Why do vampires not like werewolves? Well, it depends on the story. In some versions, they worked with and were friends with the vampires. In other versions, they were enslaved by vampires. Modern stories... Cool.
Done my round.
Modern...
Killed 50 people. Yay.
Okay, cool.
I don't want to get banned. It's a game. I don't want to get banned. Yo. Oof.
Yes, good to note that. So in some versions, it's because of the enslavement by the vampires that werewolves are at war, if you will, with the vampires. But a lot of it has actually to do not with the original stories, but with the modern movies, because it's exciting and cool. And I mean, let's face it, the Underworld was very cool. It was a good series. Yeah, it was good stories. I mean, I enjoyed them immensely. But funny enough, even Martin Luther refers to werewolves. And Olaus Magnus, in his very long and Latin named book, which is the Historia Gentibus Septenatralibus, which will mean nothing to anybody nowadays unless you speak Latin. He talks about an assembly of werewolves that would gather near the Lithuania and Courland border, and it include a number of Lithuanian nobility even, as well as other werewolves, to test their strengths by attempting to jump over a castle wall's ruins. And those who succeeded were regarded as being strong enough. But if you were to fail at it, you would be punished with whippings. So there's your other answer, Jordan Fox. They are supposed to be strong enough to jump over a castle wall, which I'm assuming would be at least 2 or 3 stories high. So yeah, you've got to be strong, you've got to be fast, it seems. Now, there were a lot of reports of werewolf attacks and court trials that followed in 16th century France. And in some cases, there was clear evidence against the accused of both murder and cannibalism, which may have been part of it. Whether or not they were actual werewolves, people like Gilles Garnier in 1573 was convicted of being a werewolf and executed for it. It received its peak attention late 16th to early 17th century with the witch trials, as we have said. And we know that there were quite a few writings on werewolves, and they were cited apparently in Anjou in 1598. And in 1602, Henry Bourget wrote a lengthy chapter about them. In 1603, a teenage werewolf was sentenced to life imprisonment in Bordeaux.
Well, how do you get sentenced to life in prison if you're a werewolf? Can't you just eat the guards up and...
Well, they managed to catch him, and back in the day, prisons were not like your modern prisons, which really are quite nice. Back in the day, it basically meant you were locked in a cell and you never came out. If you were lucky, somebody would throw food through the bars once in a while. And generally, back in the day, the rule was you were fed by your family. And if your family couldn't afford it, or if you didn't have family, you simply passed away in the cell. Tough luck.
Well, I thought you meant like when you said you have to be fed by your family. I thought you meant like body parts, like cannibalism. Yo,
No, I'm talking in terms of all prisoners. Your family were the ones that fed you while you were in jail. And if you were poor and they couldn't afford to do that, then you passed away. Tough luck. Prison was prison back in the day. It was harsh. So
in 1960s or like no.
we're talking around the 16th century and earlier. So in the Swiss Vaud region, werewolves were convicted in 2 occasions, and a treatise by a Vaud pastor in 1653 argued that lycanthropy didn't exist, but then shortly after his argument against it, a boy and his mother claimed that they could turn into wolves, and there were a number of unsolved murders. So maybe they could. And we're going to bring this more modern because it gets even more interesting. So hold on. Now, we know in 17th century England, James I prosecuted witchcraft, and he regarded werewolves as victims of witchcraft. So he thought they were victims, which fits with the curse theme. Now, we know that by 1650, lycanthropy had gone mostly from French-speaking Europe and was no longer a widespread belief. And they thought that any idea of lycanthropy was a disorder of the brain, but there were still reports of wolf-like beasts that came in, such as the famous beast of Gévaudan, which terrorized the province of Gévaudan for a very long time, between 1764 and later on, and apparently took out over 80 men, women and children, and was never actually stopped. They disappeared, so who's to say? So there we had genuine events, and everyone said no, but it's not a werewolf. But there were a number of people, including some young children, that managed to avoid getting taken out by the werewolf. They ran away or hid, and they saw it, and they said it was a werewolf. So maybe it was.
Like a wolf or like the wolf of...
No, now you see this is the change. Because the original werewolves were wolves. These ones now are wolf men. So they're not just wolves, they're half and half. Say again?
Stand on both feet and and do everything.
Yes, so now we're getting to the more modern version of the werewolf, like we see in Underworld. Okay, so that does matter. And it starts to change how people view them. Now, we know that after 1650, the German-speaking parts of Europe got more interested in werewolves, and there were several books written on the topic on how to deal with them. And in the Austrian Bavarian Alps, the belief persisted well into the 18th century, and possibly after. As late as 1853 in Galicia, northwestern Spain, Manuel Bianco Romanes Santa was judged. It's the guy's name, Manuel. He was judged and condemned as the author of a number of murders, and he claimed that he wasn't guilty because it wasn't his fault, because he was a werewolf and he couldn't control himself. Now, until the 20th century, wolf attacks were more occasional because obviously wolf populations passed away from Europe as people spread and cities grew. But some scholars have suggested it was inevitable that wolves, being the most feared predators, were considered to be werewolves. And this is shown in the psychology of archaeology, that in Africa you get were hyenas, in India you have were tigers, and South America you have were pumas and were jaguars, and I believe were pumas in North America, and of course the famous tigre capiango from South America, which is a kind of, it's not a tiger and it's not a jaguar, it's one of the other big cats. So there's a lot of other versions where apex predators are accused of being that. But we also see it in other cases which modern science say were serial killers. But at the time, it was said that they were in fact werewolves, even claiming to be werewolves. So there's that. Now we know in Turkish folklore there were a number of shaman who claimed that they could voluntarily turn into a kırtadam, which is wolfman. So it's just a Turkish word for werewolf. But they were seen to be good. The wolf of the totemic ancestor among some of the Turkic peoples, and they would respect any shaman who had the power to change like that. So here you see the first of the good werewolves.
Oh, I've got to go.
No problemo, sir. I hope you have enjoyed so far and you have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So absolutely, we see a number of different forms starting to come up. So hopefully you're going to stick with me, Jacqueline, and carry on. Oh, awesome. Do appreciate. So yes, now modern researchers have tried to explain the reports of werewolf behavior with recognized medical conditions. And in 1963, Dr. Lee Iles in London wrote a paper entitled On Porphyria and the Etiology of Werewolves, in which he argues that historical accounts are referring to victims of congenital porphyria, and symptoms of photosensitivity, reddish teeth, and psychosis would be grounds for accusing somebody of being a werewolf, but were mere ordinary medical conditions, which is one...
Porphyria, is that the illness that you can't go into light or something like that?
No, that's photosensitivity. Porphyria is where you have a severe form of anemia, a deficiency of iron, which leads you to crave blood, basically, because blood's very, very high in iron, just to keep yourself healthy. So there is that. So this is modern science trying to explain. Now, this is argued against, who points out how mythological werewolves were almost invariably portrayed as resembling true wolves, and that their human forms were rarely conspicuous as porphyria victims. Others pointed out the possibility that they were people with hypertrichosis, which is a hereditary condition manifesting itself in excessive hair growth. So people were more hairy and therefore they were thought to be werewolves, which is one of the signs, apparently. But there again, that's a dubious situation. Some people say maybe it was rabies that was the origin of werewolves beliefs, because the symptoms of that does seem to fit with certain forms of rabies. So, well, maybe. But what are the characteristics? So, now, the beliefs are not uniform. So, different places saw things as different. Some said the transformation are temporary. Some say it's permanent. Some say that they are human, that the were creature transformed themselves on purpose. Some say that it's a devil whose activity leaves the real human unchanged, but their soul goes out into the body of the wolf, leaving the human body in a state of trance. Some say it's a familiar spirit. That's usually the witchcraft side of things, where the witch can ride the body of the animal in spirit form and make it do things. We know that they're supposed to have physical traits even in human form. So if you have a unibrow, so just one eyebrow that meets in the middle, then you're a werewolf. So check a mirror in if you like. Nope, I'm good. Okay. So hopefully that. Curved fingernails. I do, as a matter of fact, have curved fingernails. Maybe I'm a werewolf. Aha. If you have low set ears, so your ears are slightly lower than the norm on a human, or a swinging stride, so you walk in a loping manner like a wolf, then you're a werewolf. If you want to identify a werewolf in human form, you cut the flesh of the accused under the pretense that fur can be seen in the wound. So if you're cut and inside the cut underneath is hair, then you're a werewolf. A Russian belief is that you have hair under the tongue. Sounds a bit gross, but nevertheless. Now, here we go on to appearance. So in its animal form, this varies again. The most commonly being that you look exactly like an ordinary wolf. It's a complete transformation. Except for the fact, in some versions, the wolf won't have a tail, which might be that. Some say that it's larger, retains human eyes and voice, which would be quite creepy. Certain Swedish accounts, the werewolf could be distinguished from a regular wolf by the fact that it would run on 3 legs, stretching the 4th one backwards to look like a tail, because they don't have a tail. After returning to their human forms, they're usually as documented as becoming weak, debilitated, and undergoing a painful nervous depression. One universally reviled trait in medieval Europe was the werewolf's habit of devouring recently buried dead, a trait that has been documented extensively in the Annales Medico-Psychologiques in the 19th century, which sounds particularly nasty. So, becoming. How do you become a werewolf? All right, so the simplest one is you remove your clothing, putting on a belt made of wolfskin, which is probably a substitute for the use of the entire skin, which also is used. And in some cases, you also need a magic salve. So that's one way, that's voluntary. The 16th century Swedish writer Olaf Magnus says that Livonian werewolves were initiated by draining a cup of specially prepared beer and repeating a set formula, which sounds like a much nicer way to try to become a wolf. In his Songs of the Russian People, he gives the form of the incantation in Russian, and apparently it's still known in there. In Italy, France, and Germany, it was said that a man or woman could turn into a werewolf if he or she on a certain Wednesday or Friday, slept outside on a summer night with the full moon shining directly on his or her face. Maybe I've been camping in the full moon many times and I still am not a wolf. That's disappointing. Some, of course, because it had to come to this, because obviously Christianity had a great deal of interest in werewolves, that it was accomplished by satanic allegiance for loathsome ends. So sooner or later you had to be accused of being a Satanist. Certain sorcerers, having anointed their bodies with an ointment which they make by the instigation of the devil, and putting certain enchanted belts on, does not only view of others seem as wolves, but of their own thinking to have the shape and nature. And as long as they wear the said shape, they do dispose themselves as wolves in worrying and killing the most humane creatures. So they write about it in quite a long way. So you can do it by magic, which is one way. You can do it by curse, which is somebody else doing it to you and is generally bad. So we've got a number of different versions. We do know that this is different to the other forms of therianthropes in other countries. But werewolves, it seems, can be made werewolves by divine judgment. And apparently there are many examples of God or the saints allegedly cursing those who evoke their wrath with lycanthropy, as is the case with Lycaon, who was cursed by Zeus. Those who were... Say again?
There was a movie I watched was called Cursed, or Accursed, or something, where it was the gypsies, they put a curse on the people who were taking their land.
Yes.
And, yeah.
Absolutely.
There was another one I watched, it was a series, I can't remember the name now, but what happens is if you drink, like a footprint, if there's water in a footprint of a
Correct. Now,
you drink the water,
you become a wolf. Now, I think, if I'm correct, that one actually comes not from the Lufgaru, but from the Rougarou, which is American. But we will find out. But you are quite correct. If you were excommunicated by the church, you could become a werewolf. And by and large, as things moved on, it was attributed to malignant sorcerers for the most part. But, strangely enough, it also says all angels, good and bad, have the power of transforming. And Thomas Aquinas and St. Patrick were said to have transformed into wolves, as did the Welsh king Vereticus. So it seems that even good people could become werewolves in that regard. So maybe. Now, we know that the exception to the association with the devil came from the 80-year-old man named Thies in Jurgensburg in Livonia in 1692, which is pretty recent. And he testified under oath that he and other werewolves were the hounds of God. He claimed that they were warriors who descended into hell to battle witches and demons, and their efforts ensured that the devil and his minions did not carry off the grain from local failed crops to hell. And he was given 10 lashes for idolatry and suspicious belief. But it seemed that he was one of the good kind of werewolves, and he believed he was. Now there are remedies how to remove werewolf form. So they say that the power of exhaustion can cure you in Greek and Roman antiquity. So if you are subjected to long periods of physical activity, you would be purged of it. So possibly. In medieval Europe, there are 3 methods that you can use to cure a victim. Medicinally, through the use of wolfbane, surgically, or by exorcism. I'm not too sure how the surgical method would work, and it sounds unpleasant. Yeah, I don't think I'd like that. A Sicilian belief of Arabic origin says that a werewolf can be cured of its ailment by striking it on the forehead or scalp with a knife. Another belief from the same culture involves piercing the werewolf's hands with nails. So it seems that this might be part of the reason why very often in antiquity, when archaeologists dig up tombs, you find the person therein nailed down. It's werewolf things.
I think in that movie, The Curse, the guy was kept. He was a werewolf. He was cursed, but he had they fired a silver bullet inside of him. As long as he had the bullet inside of him, it stopped him from.
Yes. Now we need to come to silver in that regard. Blake, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, good, good. We've got a bit of an echo going there.
Oh, about it.
I hope you can all still hear me.
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay, good, good, good. So, other methods of curing. Blake, I have a small suspicion I'm getting feedback from your side. So can I ask you to mute when you are not talking to... Yeah. Shot dot. There we go, sorted. Yeah, sometimes we get feedback. So he's done nothing wrong to be muted. We're just stopping the feedback. So, okay, so you can nail somebody's hands to cure somebody, which sounds unpleasant. If you are addressed 3 times by your Christian name, it will cure you. That sounds good. So if I just, yeah, I can work with that one, you know. Don't nail me to something. One Danish belief that if you're properly scolded, it will cure you, which I don't know about that. And a devotion to Saint Herbert will cure you as well. So, all right. If you convert to Christianity, it will also cure you from being a werewolf. So they considered werewolves to not be Christians, which you must remember, because here's the thing. The Rougarou, which is the Louisiana version of a werewolf, is Christian, as we shall find. Now, many cultures believed that werewolves are connected with the undead, that they would prowl the battlefields, and of course this comes up in their links to vampires, and possible other links around the varying countries. So much so that in certain Slavic areas like Serbia, the word for werewolf and the word for vampire is the same very often, vulkodlak. So they're connected. Yes, she is, Blake. Yes, she is. Shall I tell her for you?
Oh, thank you.
Oh, there you go. That's nice and very sweet. So, in Hungary and the Balkans, werewolves are said to live mostly in the region of Transdanubia. That means across the Danube River. And it was said that the ability to change into a wolf is obtained in infancy, either through parental abuse or by curse. And by the age of 7, the boy or girl must leave their home at night to go hunting and can change to a person or wolf whenever they want. the curse can be obtained in adulthood if a person passes 3 times through an arch made of birch with the help of a wild rose's thorn. Not quite sure how that would work, but sounds nicer than the other methods we've come across so far. I think that's very fair. Now, werewolves were the biggest problem because they tended to go for farm animals, especially sheep. And it usually happened during the winter solstice, particularly because, as you know, midwinter there's very little food around. So obviously they would go for extras because werewolves are noted to eat quite a lot. A problem if there are werewolves. She has read your comment, Blake, and she was very flattered. She does thank you for it. That's very sweet, though. Isn't it nice to be told you're pretty?
No, you made my day.
There you go. It's a good thing. Now, among the South Slavs and the ethnic Kashubian people in present-day northern Poland, there is still a belief that a child born with hair or birthmark or a caul could possibly become a werewolf, but possibly also might be able to turn into any animal that they wish. Now, the Volkoglak from Serbia had the habit of congregating annually in the winter months, where they would take off their wolfskins and hang them from trees, and then they would hold another Volkoglak's skin and try and burn it to release the owner from the curse, so that they could let each other become human again. How do you turn on your camera? At the bottom, at least that's how I did it, there is a line of things that have sound, camera, and other connections, and I used that there. Or up on the
It's
left.
Video camera.
Yes, you should be able to click on it to be seen. No luck? Well, that's all the knowledge I have on the matter, so hopefully the Twilight Werewolf. Jordan, I watched 5 minutes of Twilight because I deemed it as being the most awful possible movie ever made at all, ever. The vampires were stupid and the werewolves were worse. But that's just me. I couldn't stand that movie. Twilight was awful. I know a lot. I know a lot of people enjoyed it. I'm being giggled at from across the room.
I agree with you, but the thing is, I think it's like a teen rom. It's not, you can't, it's like a romance.
Yes, it's not based on any proper mythology. It's designed for teen romance and nothing else. That is pretty much it. So yeah, I can't explain it because I never bothered to watch it. Now, in Armenian law, there are women who, in consequence of deadly sins, are condemned to spend 7 years in wolf form. I'm not quite sure why it's the women, but it is. A typical account, a condemned woman is visited by a wolf-carrying spirit who orders her to wear the skin, which causes her to acquire frightful cravings for flesh, and you know what kind. With her better nature overcome, the she-wolf devours each of her own children and then her relatives' children in order of relationship, and finally the children of strangers. She wanders only at night with doors and locks opening just as she walks near them. And when morning arrives, she reverts to human form and removes the wolfskin. It's said, however, to be an involuntary transformation. But there are versions that say it is voluntary when she can transform at will. So there is that. Now, we move on to America and the Caribbean. Now, we know that the Naskapis believed that the Caribou's afterlife is guarded by giant wolves that kill careless hunters. And the Navajo believed that witches in wolf clothing called the Maikob could turn into wolves. Some say that these stories only happened after European colonization, but there's no real certainty of that, though pioneers did bring their own werewolf folklore with them, which did mix with the native belief and developed into what is known as the loup-garou, which comes from France, and obviously because Canada is very French, spread around Canada. The upper and lower peninsulas of Michigan and upstate New York comes from French folklore influenced by Native American stories, which then mixed the loup-garou with the wendigo. And a wendigo is a completely different spirit. In Mexico, oh yeah, I think it is very creepy. In Mexico, you have a creature called the nagual. In Haiti, they have the gerouge, which basically translates to red eyes. And there again, that's influenced by the loup-garou, because there are no wolves in Haiti. So the gerouge try to trick mothers into giving away their children voluntarily and waking them suddenly while they're still half asleep and asking them. Now, they can't do this without permission. So there's a thing. If you deny a werewolf, there's that. Now, there's a lot of fiction, but let's look at some cases of real werewolves. And we're going to begin with Peter Stumpf, who was born in 1530 and passed on in 1589. He's known by a couple of different versions of his name. He was a German farmer, and he was absolutely a serial killer. And he was accused of being a werewolf, and he claimed to be a werewolf and a cannibal and a witch. And he was known as the Werewolf of Bedburg, which is a town in Germany. And there was even a 16-page pamphlet, which, bearing in mind this is early printing, which was not like modern printing. It was very difficult and expensive to do. So a 16-page pamphlet was a lot in German, which explained all of the issues around Peter Stumpf. The English version of it, one of the two remaining copies, exist in the British Museum, and those are the only ones left, and it describes Stumpf's life, his alleged crimes, and the trial, and includes many statements from neighbors and witnesses on the crimes. It was basically a woodcut. So before you had movable type, you would have to carve the entire print onto a single block, ink it, and then make that page. So 16 pages meant they had to carve literally 16 blocks of wood to make stamps. So a serious issue. It was in the German newspapers as well, and sadly all the pamphlets about it were all lost. Now we know that Edward Fairfax also mentioned it in the persecution of his own daughters who were accused of witchcraft, when he tried to get them off from what happened, but alas, he did not, and they fell foul to the witch trials. But the exact place and date of Peter Stumpf's birth is unknown, but it was somewhere near Bedburg in Germany. His name has a number of different versions, which is because of translation and bad spelling back in the day. But Stumpf may have been given to him as a surname because his left hand had been lost, leaving only a stump. And German Stumpf means stump. And it is alleged that as a werewolf, he could be identified and was identified because his front left paw was missing, and it proved the guilt of the man. He was wealthy, quite a rich farmer in his community. He seems to have been a widower with 2 children, a daughter called Sybil and a son we don't know much about. So he had one of the most lurid trials in history. He was stretched on a rack before further torture. He confessed to having practiced black magic since he was 12 and claimed that the devil had given him a magic belt that enabled him to metamorphose into the likeness of a greedy, devouring wolf, strong and mighty, with eyes great and large, which in the night sparkled with fire, a mouth wide with most sharp and cruel teeth, a huge body and mighty paws, and he would turn back into a human by removing the belt. And he hid the belt in a certain valley, and they tried to find it, but they never could. For 25 years, he was an insatiable bloodsucker who gorged on the flesh of goats, lambs, sheep, women, children, and more. And being threatened with torture, he confessed to killing and eating 14 children, 2 pregnant women, which he also ate, and especially their hearts. So he was a bad chap, no matter what. But one of the problems with this is he confessed all of this under torture. So was it true, or did he just want the torture to stop? That's the problem.
Do you know about the El Chupacabra?
Yes, the goat sucker.
Goat sucker.
Yes,
Do you think that's maybe a version of a werewolf?
no, they're quite different. We will have to get to that as well, because you see a number of different varieties of cryptids turn up in different places. You get something like a goat sucker in other countries as well, apparently. So there is that. Down there you don't get werewolves so much as you get other were creatures for the most part. Now, what's really sad, I suppose, is that they not only executed Peter, but they executed his daughter as well, for good measure, which seems a bit sad. And not only that, his mistress, Catherine, as well. He was put on a wheel which tore the flesh from his body. Then they used red-hot pincers to pull more skin off. Then they broke his arms and legs with the blunt side of an axe head. Then he was beheaded. And then when they'd done all of that, they burnt him on a bonfire. His daughter and mistress had already been flayed and then strangled, and then they were burnt with him. So let's face it, they really went all out to really do the job. The poor people, you know, they were dead.
Yeah.
So, but they are not the only ones, because we have other versions of werewolves that we do need to consider. And they are quite important because they turn up in weird places in history that you wouldn't expect. And modern places of history that you wouldn't expect. Now we're sort of getting towards the end of our time that we have. So we will still have to carry it on in the next live because we've got a lot of other werewolves to consider. That includes the lobizon, the rougarou, and more, as well as talking a little bit more about the alfhednar, the varying things in that regard, and similar ones. So even the Aztecs had some kind of version of werewolf that we will need to talk about. So we've barely started the topics. So absolutely we need to go into more because they change in the way things go. And here's the thing. There are legends of werewolves fighting alongside one of the sides during the Civil War in America. In the War of 1812, there are legends of werewolves attacking both Russian and Ukrainian soldiers back in the day in the war that happened there, and a legend, rather interestingly, where the Ukrainians were trapped and were completely outnumbered, and the Russians were coming through, and they knew they would win because the Ukrainians had about 300 soldiers left in this particular battle, and the Russians had like 4,000. And they had to come through a particular valley, so the Ukrainians drew back in the valley to try and get to a safer spot. But that night, terrible howls were heard, and the next morning the Russian army were all gone. And I don't mean gone as in left, because their bodies remained. And it seemed that the werewolves had risen up and taken them out. So they won a battle purely because the werewolves had rocked up and did it. So we need to talk about those. So there's a lot more. There's a lot more. And we will carry that on tomorrow because I think it's been a very interesting one. The idea of all of these origins. And I mean, let's face it, Jacqueline, we haven't even talked about the other therianthropes, only the wolf. And we're going to do the other ones as well. So I do hope you will come back. Not tomorrow, actually, no. Tomorrow is Sunday. I do apologize. We don't do a live on Sunday, people. Sunday is a day for sleepies. So on Monday night will be the next one, all about the rest of the werewolf as much as we can do, or possibly take it even further. And then other shapeshifters. And so, yeah, bring stories, bring ideas, bring comments, and we shall find more about it, such as how, yes, as Jacqueline said, drinking water from the footprint of a werewolf can turn you into a werewolf. But that sounds pretty gross as well.
You want to watch something interesting? The series is called Hemlock Grove.
Oh, Hemlock Grove. I will make a note. Hold on.
It's got a whole lot of different mythical creatures and stuff in it.
That is cool. I'm just writing that down. Series. Cool. I will check it out because I love stories like that. So yes, absolutely. But yeah, this has been a fairly wild one. Excuse the pun. It's been very good indeed, and I have enjoyed it so far immensely, and I hope we will find more. And I do hope you guys come back on Monday night for the rest of the live. It's been great having you along. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Jacqueline, for being a part of it. It's been wonderful, and I absolutely appreciate your being with us. So, Monday night. And awesome. As we end the way we always end, that good night, sleep deep, sleep sweet, but remember, sleep with one eye open, because you might need that holy symbol need at hand, or possibly a silver bullet, because sometimes those things that go bump in the night might yet go bump for you. Good night.